Does it make any difference what you see every day, and hear, and smell, and feel, and know is over the horizon? Who shares it with you, whether it is permanent or fleeting? If the horizon is a straight line, that's the world you are seeing, but a tree or a mountain will cut off part of the world. So in some places, the world is very still and permanent. These trees and boulders, cliffs, vistas, without any plan, they are waiting. These presences don't notice you, but they have endless patience and courtesy. Over the years, the calls of meadowlarks in the morning have rinsed off these upland parts of the world. I think we should keep some of this in case God comes back to see what we did with it. Our February edition of Brethren Voices featured poet William Stafford. He was one of the great American poets of the past century and a member of the Church of the Brethren. He was born 100 years ago in Hutchinson, Kansas. He was a conscientious objector during World War II. He spent 3 years in work camps in Arkansas and California. Today, we have one of his sons, Kim Stafford, with us. Kim, it's so good to have you with us on Brethren Voices.
Good to be here, Brent.
It's so marvelous to have you in our studio because I have heard you at poetry readings where you read your poetry and your father's poetry, and you have been doing that a lot in this last year.
Yeah, I've been all over the centennial of the old man's birth.
A lot of kids don't want to follow in their father's footsteps, and yet you have. Do you remember making that decision?
Well, you know, my father helped me by by ridiculing my way of doing it. This may sound paradoxical, but one time he came in. I just published this book, Having Everything Right, these rhapsodic essays. And my father said, you know, Baroque prose. You know, first Annie Dillard did it. Now everybody's doing it, this over-the-top kind of language. And I said, well, Daddy, that's kind of what I do. You're one of the worst. And I think he was saying, you're different from me. You know, what you're doing, it may look the same to others, but it's very different. Because, you know, his pieces are concise, plain-spoken, brief, and mine tend to be more, I sing, I'm a singer. You know, so I don't exactly feel like I'm following in his footsteps. Maybe we're on parallel paths.
Okay. But you are associated with Lewis and Clark.
Yeah,
and
that's
you
true.
teach classes, and
Yeah.
I would like you to sing a little bit for us.
Yeah, be happy to. One is an old Oregon folk song that was probably written in the 1840s or 50s down in the rainy Coast Range. Come you Alsea girls, listen to my noise. Don't you marry those Oregon boys. If you do, your fortune it'll be Johnny cake and venison's all you'll see. They take you to a side-hewed wall without any windows in it at all. Sandstone chimney and a puncheon floor, clapboard roof and a button door. So come girls, come, listen to my noise. Don't you marry those Oregon boys. If you do, your fortune it'll be Johnny cake and venison's all you'll see. Oh, when they go a-milking, they milk it in a gourd, hide it in a corner and strain it with a board. Some gets a little and some gets none. That's how things in the Oregon run. So come girls, come, listen to my noise. Don't you marry those Oregon boys. If you do, your fortune it'll be Johnny cake and venison's all you'll see. Every night before you go to bed, they build up a fire as high as your head. Rake away the ashes, in they'll throw a great big gump of old sourdough. So come girls, come, listen to my noise. Don't you marry those Oregon boys. If you do, your fortune it'll be Johnny cake and venison's all you'll see. What I love about that song is bragging about what's difficult. Adversity, blessing can come together in a song. And this last song is one that I think, in an oblique, mysterious way, draws on Brethren heritage, but filtered through the 60s, and it feels like a folk song to me. It came to me when I was in a silent retreat far from home, and I heard my brother's voice speaking this song to me. There it is. When you come to the end of your highway, turn and look where you've run. When all you've gathered is scattered, open your hands to the sun. Your journey's far from over. When your days are done in this world, your story's just begun. When all your light comes to darkness, follow darkness on. When all your songs come to silence, trust what lies beyond. Your journey's far from over. When your days are done in this world, your story's just begun. Now open a furrow in the garden, set down the future seed by seed. Open your door to the stranger, in his eyes find what you need. Our journey's far from over. When our days are done in this world, our story's just begun. Listen how the wind is rising. She has a far place to be. Feel how your spirit is reaching. Who knows what she may see? Your journey's far from over. When your days are done in this world, your story's just begun.
And having listened to you sing a song that you wrote, I suddenly realized that the lyrics in music are often poems.
Oh, yes.
I never realized that.
Yeah.
And they're very, they've got the symmetry, they've got the rhyme, they've got the syncopation.
Yeah. I think song is our native voice. I once heard an opera singer say, when we come into the world, we come singing. And, it's an aria. A baby's cry is an aria. And later we sort of dumb it down into prose and into information and, composition and persuasion and all. But our native voice is to pour forth in song what is within us. So that's my feeling about it.
I think you may have something there, because I find every once in a while I'm just making a tune up, and it's so easy. I will sing a tune along with the radio, but a lot of times I'm just making something up, and I thought, where does that come from?
Yeah,
where does that come from? Just in summarizing kind of where we are, your father was so prolific. He
Yes.
wrote 22,000 poems.
Yes.
And published a number of books. Do you know the number?
Well, he published 60 in his lifetime, and there have been 21 since he died.
Okay. And wow, and probably still more poems.
Oh yeah.
To be written and published.
Approximately infinite.
Oh my, oh my. And you have written some books on poetry and prose.
Yes.
What's your count to date?
15 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you just tell us from your point of view, what is poetry?
Poetry is saying as much as you can in the shortest possible space. And what this means is you need to make use of every nuance, every dimension, the sound, the rhythm, the image, the association, the music of language that we use for all kinds of prosaic tasks. But in poetry, we need to do it intensely and briefly. So that's poetry.
I was moved by something that you told me about today. That is your father's last poem, and I think it exemplifies what you just said. Would you be willing to read?
Yeah. Yeah, in his last poem, written August 28th, 1993, "It's for the best," my mother said. "Nothing can ever be wrong for anyone truly good." And I think that's that through line of character, that as a child, he tried to do the right thing. And he was buffeted, but he was persistent, right to the last poem of his life.
You said his mother, your grandmother, changed that a little bit.
Oh, no, this is my mother's mother.
Oh, your mother's mother.
Yeah, my mother's mother, my other grandmother, would say to her children, all will be well for those whose mother truly loves the Lord. She was their protector.
Okay. Okay, I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
You have a brother who's deceased, and you have two sisters.
Two sisters.
I was very surprised to find out that they all have a kind of an artistic bent.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just intrigued about how you discovered that you liked poetry and wanted to go into English and literature, much as your father did, but in a different way, because you were studying a different kind of literature.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I was going to be a forest ranger.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to live in the woods. I was not really bookish as a child. I liked making fires in the woods and making arrow points and bows and arrows, and I was a wild child. And then I went off to the University of Oregon, and I was going to be an art major, ceramics. And I studied architecture and German, Latin, French, Italian, Spanish. I just wanted to be a kind of a vagabond. But then in my senior year, I got married, so I had to get serious.
And make some money.
So I became an English major. And then this very odd thing happened. This is one of the great ironies of life. I was offered an NDEA Title IV fellowship to study graduate literature. Do you remember what NDEA?
National Defense Education Act.
Yeah. To beat the Russians, I was funded to study Old English poetry.
Is that right? I got one of those grants to be a master's in counseling and.
Good. So peace work.
Yeah, peace
That's
work.
good. Reconciliation.
So then you went to graduate school.
Then I went to graduate school, and I stopped writing poetry at that point because I had this kind of haunting experience. When a poem started to get going on the page, I would hear my father's voice reading the poem. That didn't sit well with me. So I went to essays. I wrote essays.
Oh, okay.
And years later, I circled back to poetry.
You ended up deciding, making a decision.
So here's my story. I'm in college at the University of Oregon, and Vietnam is heating up, and I get my draft notice. I go up to Portland, and I realize, well, I have to declare I'm a conscientious objector. And typically, I hadn't thought ahead about this. I was a young guy, and so I stayed up all night trying to remember from first grade Sunday school, Brethren Church, Manchester, Indiana, what my beliefs are. So I had to kind of intuitively write a rationale, and then I met the draft board, and they granted me CO status. And then I went and showed my essay to my mom, and she said, yeah, that's in keeping with Brethren belief. So I think I had it, from childhood by osmosis.
Your father had, and I think it came out of those camps.
Yes.
He had a practice of getting up early in the morning. Can you tell us about what he did and how he shared that and taught other people?
Yeah, what happened was here are these young, deeply thoughtful, curious, spiritual young men in camp. And in the camp my father was in, Magnolia, Arkansas, they decided as a group, let's all get up early and sort of make a school and keep learning and teach each other what we understand, because when the war's over, we're going to need to help rebuild society, rebuild international connections. So anyone who knows anything about economics, that person teaches. If you know about literature, if you know about art, music, sociology, science, let's be a school. So they all got up at 3 a.m. and they would have classes and they would, do plays and all kinds of projects. And that's when my father started every morning writing what came to him. And when the war ended, others started getting up later, but he was stubborn. He just, till the last day of his life, he'd get up at 3 or 4 a.m. and write something like a poem.
And he always started, there were 4 things he would write.
Yeah.
And he started with the date.
So this is my practice as well. So here's from this morning. Just hold this up. Yeah, I write the date on a piece of paper. And then he would write sort of a diary entry. This is what we did yesterday. This is what happened. Boring prose, I call it. And then he would come to an idea somewhere in that writing. Well, here's an idea. And then that idea would launch him into a poem. So he'd write something like a poem or notes for a poem. And this practice every day, he said it's important to write the date because you don't have to be smart when you write the date. Your hand is moving. And I think the moving hand, the hands-on thinking of writing, they say in Paris last night, the crowds protesting the terrorist attack, they held up their pens. This was the tool of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And I think for my father, every morning, attending to that opportunity. Very important.
So, how did you pick that up?
Well, it's good to have a little time to yourself. And since this is a Brethren program, again, some people pray, some people sing, some people read, they have a conversation with a good friend, they go to service. I think each of these activities is a way for a human being to step back from the attrition of the news, of tragedy, of darkness, difficulty, and listen, think, remember, wonder. And so I think of writing really as a spiritual practice for me. It's how I return to the inner voice, the voice of the Spirit. I don't know how to name it, but I know how to find it. Mm. Okay, I'd like to read a couple poems from a book called Prairie Prescription. These are poems about Nebraska and my mother's family heritage. And this first one is about her father, Harrison, France. So this is back about 1890s in Nebraska. It's called From the Corn. My grandfather, orphaned at 8, oldest of 5, plowed through chores Nebraska offered in spades. Winter mornings when the cows called him out from the stove-red kitchen to ringing pails flecked with cream, stall worn to gleam like a throne, hickory-handled manure fork sunk in steaming wealth the corn would beg for when summer came. The scythe snath mended so often, the baling wire wound around the handle was polished silver by hands so long gone their names were biblical. To the harrow our stony field had punished tooth by tooth, where the team dragged it west, north, east, south, in the squared spiral, ending at dusk, where his lone hunch centered the survival of the clan. All this until one chill dawn, the sky caught him by the hair, yanked him upright from despair, sun drilled through head to heart, withered almost seed hard by privation, whispered glory to the boy, in that moment become minister, summoned to labor in the vineyard of souls in far California, where an orange could fill your calloused hand. After that, the farming life was metaphor, he preached, toil and harvest, seed and bounty, frozen dawn and firelight, for the faithful in a sun-filled church at Glendale. All I really remember, his giant hands grown smooth in prayer, when he took your little fist and stared into your soul. So that's my grandpa, Harrison France. Great old man. And this other poem from this heritage from my father's side is a story about my father, William Stafford. It's called Blue Brick from the Midwest. After my father collapsed, like a bolt of light toppled without a word, I was the one to enter his study, find a jagged note to our mother he scratched as he reeled, the freight train of his departure hurtling through his heart, and all my love. A sentiment he did not speak in 79 years as tough customer, affable but stern, inert when grief came, reserved as granite when my brother died, cracking plaintive jokes when we trembled in the hospital, mother going under the knife. His way was trenchant, oblique. He distrusted those who talk about God, preferring to honor the holy with a glance, a nod, or silence. Delving deeper, the day he died, we found in his sock drawer, under that scant set of flimsy raiment, the fetching photo of the flirt, our mother, coy at the sink, looking back over her shoulder, dressed only in an apron with a big bow. No fool like an old fool. And delving deeper, back at the bottom file, the niche where one would hide the stuff of blackmail, I touched the blue brick of love letters our mother had sent him when they courted in the war. Brittle leaves kissed snug together and bound with string. The trove he had carried in secret through every move since 1943. She knew them not, nor had his. "Oh, Billy," she said. "Father, early years taught your way with the heart's contraband, when the dirty 30s blunted your bravado, tornadoes snatched your friends, the war your tenderness, and left you with these secrets hoarded for us to find when you were gone."
Kim, thank you for being with us on Brother Voices.
Thank you, Brent.
It's been a delight.
Delight.
For Brethren Voices, this is Brent Carlson,
This is Kim Stafford.
wishing you peace.
Okay, I'd like to read a William Stafford poem from this new book, Ask Me, 100 Essential Poems. This is a poem he wrote 2 days before he died. It's called You Reading This, Be Ready. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent old wood hovers, that softened sound that fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse you found. Carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? So I think that really speaks for his sense of encounter with words, with another person, with an idea. This is it. This is now. This is our treasure. And then I'd like to read a poem of mine that came to me in Bhutan. I took a group of writers there several years ago, and we saw everywhere prayer flags from the moment we got off the plane. And I saw how the prayer flags, maybe you know, they're made to, as the wind blows, it carries the words of the prayer to a far place, toward all sentient beings, bringing blessings. And I thought how, as a prayer flag unravels, as the wind slowly takes it apart, the message, the words would be fewer and fewer. So this is called Wind Unravels a Prayer Flag at Hongsho. 1. The printed prayer. Remember our Father, how he touched the face of our mother, how together they saw a child walking along the ridge at sunrise and poured their years into the land of their labor, so their family and their country might prosper in right living for the span of their lives after the promise. 2. After a season of wind. Remember, Father, he touched the face, our mother, a child, walking along and poured into the land after the promise. 3. After a season of wind. Father, our mother, a child walking the land after the promise. 4. Father, our walking the land after.
These trees and boulders, cliffs, vistas, without any plan, they are waiting. These presences don't notice you, but they have endless patience and courtesy. Over the years, the calls of meadowlarks in the morning have rinsed off these upland parts of the world. I think we should keep some of this in case God comes back to see what we did with it.